Hello and welcome back to Spare a Thought, the podcast for curious minds exploring creativity, culture and stories from the margins. I'm your host, Tom Spare. In the previous episode, a couple of weeks ago, I released an interview with my friend Harriet White for Breathing and the Menstrual Cycle, recorded in front of an audience at Catay's Community Centre in Cardiff on the 16th of July. Harriet explained her coaching journey, the relationship women have with their periods, and the role that breathing can play in helping women's health. You can listen to that episode wherever you found this one. As it's the summer holidays, I'm running a bit of a pared back schedule for the show. I hope to put out a couple of episodes in the next month or so. We'll be back for a new set of episodes in the autumn. Now, I associate summer holidays with the movies, with big movies. This summer has not disappointed, with Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey released on the 17th of July and the latest Spider-Man, Brand New Day, on the 29th of July in the UK, both featuring Tom Holland and Zendaya. Those who follow my Substack, Spare a Thought, will know I dabble every now and then in film reviews for what I call the Spare Time Review. So for the first time on the podcast, I'm swinging into a film review. And today's focus is the Marvel Cinematic Universe's 38th film, Spider-Man Brand New Day. And I'll do my best to remain spoiler-free throughout. After coming out of the cinema, some really core memories were unlocked. The first Spider-Man film I went to see was Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2, which I went to see with my mum. It was released in 2004 when I was 12. And many consider it one of the best sort of superhero films out there. Ahead of it, most prominently, Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight. I also remember I had this interactive comic book that made loads of sound effects, which saw Spider-Man trailing Kirk Connors into the sewers of New York. And my brother Matt had a substantial comic book collection that I would dip into every now and then. He had plenty of Spidey comics along with crossovers with the Fantastic Four, the Avengers and Punisher. And I also inherited a Marvel guide to comic book drawing from my brothers, which sort of sparked a lot of imagination and a lot of drawing. Comics and, Spider-Man films in particular have always chimed with me. And I think in part because it's, in seeing that character who is younger than most of the others, Spider-Man really in the Marvel franchise is the only teenage, or pretty much the only teenage superhero going. There's some younger characters in like the X-Men world. So I think as someone growing up, Spider-Man was the most accessible character, someone who wasn't this sort of godlike character, but someone who's a kid just trying to live his life in extraordinary times. And he was special, and he had to navigate that in the world, basically. Now, I'm not even going to attempt to recount the complicated web of films that now make up the MCU. It would need a lot more than a podcast episode for that. Instead, here's a short catch-up from the previous Tom Holland Spider-Man film, Spider-Man No Way Home. So in the previous film, Peter Parker's identity as Spider-Man is exposed to the world through doctored footage engineered by Mysterio, the villain from Far From Home, framing Peter for a drone attack on London. Overnight, Peter becomes a public enemy number one, and the fallout drags down his girlfriend MJ and his best friend Ned, even costing them their college places. Desperate to fix things, Peter asks Doctor Strange to cast a spell erasing the world's memory of his secret identity. But the spell backfires, tearing open the multiverse and pulling in villains like Dr. Octopus and the Green Goblin, as well as bringing back Spider-Man variants from other timelines played by Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. The three Peters team up to defeat the invaders, but the battle costs Peter his Aunt May. The heroes win out, but Holland's Peter is grief-stricken, and Peter asks Strange to complete the original spell, erasing himself from everyone's memory, including MJ and Ned, so they can live safely without knowledge of Peter and his secret identity. No Way Home tied a bow not only on Tom Holland's Peter Parker, creating a really neat trilogy, but Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's versions too. And that's no mean feat for 8 films over the course of close to 20 years. Tom Holland himself did admit it would be strange to still be playing Spider-Man into his 30s. Now, when the announcement came of a new Spider-Man film, I was a little bit surprised because Holland was sort of coming up to 30, although all appearances are young 30. A dynamic actor, someone I think we can all appreciate is very good at this role. So it did come as a bit of a surprise that a new edition was in the works. But from the opening monologue, my skepticism disappeared, primarily because of Holland's central performance. 10 years as Spider-Man will do that to an actor. We have to remember that Holland's Spider-Man has actually featured in quite a few films alongside the trilogy. So Captain America Civil War was his first appearance in 2016. Then you have Avengers Part 1 and 2, 2018, 2019. And of course, now his own trilogy of 2017, 2019, and 2021, respectively. There are two elements, sort of substantive elements, that carry us through this film. It's the leading man and the music, as well as the sort of the wider cast as well. So first, the leading man. Whenever the plot wavers in this film, I have full faith in Holland because he is the ultimate good guy on screen and off. He appears in hospitals dressed as Spider-Man. He does a lot of fundraising. He has a charity called the Brothers Trust, which he set up with his own brothers and his mum. He gave up alcohol after seeing its negative impacts on his life and has since started his own alcohol-free beer range called Biro. In character and in real life, Holland is the internet's golden retriever boyfriend. And I guess now with his marriage to on-screen partner Zendaya, the internet's husband as well. And the second is the music composed by Michael Giacchino, who's famed for doing music to the updated Star Trek films, to Lost and plenty of other Hollywood films out there. And he's sort of playing into the musical themes that have run through the Holland films with the additional isolation and weight of expectation that sits on Peter's shoulders. The score matches this version of Spidey, and this Spider-Man is more downcast and in many ways more broken than we've seen in previous iterations on the big screen. Peter Parker is living alone in a crappy loft apartment in Queens. He's isolated, friendless, spending every waking hour clearing the streets of crime. He's losing his spark and pushing himself to the limits. This strenuous, soulless life begins to bring out worrying symptoms. Peter's body and powers are changing, brought on by that enforced solitude. He's barely sleeping, having constant headaches. He's not looking after himself. He's seemingly mutating with no way to control his abilities. At one point, these powers start to completely overwhelm him. The outside world is full of noise and sound. And anyone who is neurodivergent, particularly those with ADHD and autism, will see themselves in Peter's plight. Meanwhile, Peter's best friends, MJ and Ned, are in their final year of college, living normal lives without knowledge of Peter's existence. The friendly neighborhood superhero we find in Brand New Day is existing more than living. Holland indicated this film was a recognition of the thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of isolated young men around the world. The antidote this film provides is not stoicism, it's not quietness, it's not holding it to yourself, but it's in talking to others and friendship, being that enduring ingredient that brings us out of the lulls in our lives. Supporting Holland's Spidey is a heartfelt and fully rounded MJ, played marvelously by Zendaya. I loved every scene that she was in. It would have been nice to have a little less loud, smashy scenes and more interactions between Holland, Zendaya, and Batalon's Ned. They are truly the heart and soul of the film, along with the comic relief from John Bernthal's Punisher, which is a nod to Marvel's TV franchises, And then Florence Pugh's Black Widow, which is a nod to the new Avengers and the new timelines that Marvel's produced. And Mark Ruffalo's reassuring screen presence as Bruce Banner, which is a nod to the old Avengers, if you will, the old franchises that we've seen previously. Numerous villains arrive across the film, including a return of Scorpion, first featured briefly in the first Holland Spider-Man film, Homecoming, and the much publicized Zadie Sink, who is a great addition to the cast. Won't reveal her role, but I will say her scenes and story bring a really well imagined, a fully imagined character to the screen. If Spider-Man Homecoming was the Gen Z reimagining of the franchise, then Far From Home and No Way Home were Peter Parker's coming to terms with his powers and coming out of the shadow of Tony Stark's Iron Man. Brand New Day is a knocking down of all those things and is in many ways a rebirth. The film benefits from a strong cast who clearly love their characters and the story they are telling. New York plays a central part in the film too. It sort of becomes its own character in many ways. There aren't any wild dashes into other dimensions or far-flung places, and I think the film really benefits from that. I've been rewatching some of the other films recently, and I think it's really great to go back to those origins. You know, New York is such a central part of the Spider-Man world. At its best, Brand New Day is a celebration of friendship, a tale of overcoming adversity and isolation, accepting change and letting go of the past. These meaty films interplay with your classic Marvel spectacle, big effects and action sequences. At times, the film almost trying to out-Marvel itself. But oddly, it's the action sequences and the wider exposition, which, you know, are no doubt setting up the future Marvel films, that detract from the heart and soul of the film. Much like in the second Holland Spider-Man, Far From Home, this film feels at times a vehicle to steer the wider Marvel narrative rather than being its own thing. Some of the best parts of the film are really in the quiet moments, the human moments, the human interaction. Peter doubting himself and MJ saying, "From my side of the curtain, all I see is a really good guy who just might be changing." This is very much a story of a young man becoming himself, becoming an adult. There are plenty of Easter eggs for the fans, from the comic strip panel adaptations and nods to references to famous comic book covers. Holland also said that the combination and fighting moves were often inspired by the game versions of his character in the PlayStation Spider-Man games. Spider-Man Brand New Day has all the ingredients to be a summer smash, and at the time of recording, just over this weekend, is close to $1 billion at the box office. It has the star power, the quips, the big action sequences, and the fight scenes. It has the drama, the tension, and the emotional heft. And I think maturity, as Tom Holland really comes into his role as Spider-Man. He's done a fantastic job across all these films, and this one is really a sort of very mature outing for him and his character, with some truly shocking and thought-provoking moments too. Now, I've read a few articles about Holland, you know, really needs to start acting parts his age, and I wonder if these were pieces written without seeing the film, designed more for sort of clicks and controversy over the beliefs of the writers themselves. But Holland has really got this role down to a T, and judging by the performances in this film and the direction which the film sort of takes us through, there's plenty more left in the tank to steer the Spidey franchise through more outings in the future. If this is to be the first of a new trilogy, I'd ask the filmmakers the next one becomes a sort of film noir detective story, with Peter Parker's Spider-Man supported by his smart, witty partner MJ and his hapless best friend Ned. Until then, Brand New Day is every bit the popcorn superhero flick you've been waiting for, but also a note, the credits serve as a really beautiful dedication to the everyday of New York. It really brings out the city as one of the main stars in the film. And on that note, that's the end of today's episode. Please rate, review, subscribe, and share. Your support amplifies the show to reach new audiences. The theme for this episode was Young Shall Grow by Afro Cluster Magugu and Asha Jane. This episode was hosted by me, Tom Spare. Sparrow Thought is a Be The Change Media Network production. Thanks for listening.
Whether you like 'em or not.